Hello, and welcome everyone to another tier list of heroes in Olden Era. So, we have finally had a resurgence of Grove. Many people are playing it, trying it, and actually having some success with the faction finally, after some time of Grove being pretty relevant. This is due to people actually getting better at the game, being able to preserve units, make better plans, and the faction is actually like somewhat playable. Still probably the worst out of all of the factions on average. However, still, they're getting a little bit better. We're gonna be tiering all the heroes, I'll tell you what I think about them, where they stand, whether I like see them often, what are the bans, and what are the picks. Welcome aboard, and this is also gonna be a single player, rank Q kind of POV. I'm not really going to be discussing a lot about their classic viability, so, keep in mind. So we're going to be just like watching them over here, and then tiering them on the tier list. So first of all is we have Eith. So Eith is a cool chicken, and yeah, he's the scouting guy with the no terrain penalty. Once again, this guy doesn't really like do enough. The specialty is not really shining through, and I don't think is viable on many formats whatsoever. He's only experimented a little bit on Bloods, but those experimentations didn't really like lead anywhere, so he is an irrelevant, bad hero. C tier. Next up is we have Goral Spearhead. Goral Spearhead is one of the best heroes that the faction has to offer, being an offense specialist, dealing a lot of damage with the attacks and starting off with a very powerful secondary skill in terms of offense. On almost any other faction, he would be S tier and super great. On this faction that needs like a lot of help and support, he actually doesn't really perform well, because you don't really get that much armor, because the armor growth is like just so low and they're like not that easy to connect. He actually just ends up being A tier in my opinion. Though honestly, like low S tier, high A tier, I believe that it only takes like a tiny little bit to push him over the edge into the S tier. But so far, this is where I think that he is currently at. Next up is Gingertail. So Gingertail is the fawn specialist. She starts off with Battlecraft and with 3 stacks of fawns. However, you only get like 8 to 12, so basically like 10 fawns per stack, which is not really a lot for a tier 1 specialist. And then usually you have to like make 1 stack of the fawns, so they kind of like end up bleeding if you take like too many fights, and it's like kind of awkward all over. However, it's actually still some of the best might performance that the faction has to offer. She's one of the consideration for the picks, and she's a pretty good hero, and the starting army certainly helps. She is also A tier, and however, she might also like kind of slip by into S tier, kind of, maybe sometimes. However, this is where I think that she is currently at. Next up is we have Old Pilgrim. He starts off with Master Galician spell, and this version of the spell's damage increases twice as fast when cast on the same target. So basically, fast scaling Guillotine. Basically it's not really good enough. Usually you want to be killing the thing off with Guillotine by like the second time that you're casting it, and it's not really going to be very helpful in the early game. And then also you're starting off with a hero that starts off with battle magic. It's just also you're basically playing for spells on a warrior and also battle magic on a warrior too. It's kind of like a very weird package here that doesn't really make sense. I don't think the Old Pilgrim is that good at all. He's gonna be C tier. Not a complete failure, but there he is. Next up is Octavia. So Octavia has luck, and she specializes in luck, making lucks way more likely to trigger. That's kind of good. There's quite a bit of affinity with luck on the faction. You can get like luck damage from the laws, and so on. The biggest problem is that the units of Grove very often maxes out at 3 maximum luck, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. When you're playing for morale, you're playing for like 5 morale units most usually. But when it comes to luck, you don't really like get that privilege. So yeah, while the luck cap is free for most of the Grove units, I don't think the Octavia is gonna be like that interesting, despite being, like, on paper, a pretty good hero, providing for a lot more damage and making luck a far more consistent mechanic than it otherwise would be. So I don't really trust her too much, but I do think that she has, like, quite a bit of potential. Next up is Morawa. So Morawa now has combat, and she's a crystal specialist. You get +1 crystal per day, then you also get like more crystal as you level up, and then you also get more crystal out on the map. So you're gonna be having like infinity crystal whenever you're gonna be playing the zero, and that on this faction is actually pretty substantial. Basically the build path always requires a lot of crystal. You know, like Naiads, Crystal, Quilling, Crystal, Phoenixes, insane amounts of Crystal. So if you're gonna be like double, triple building, quad building Phoenixes, you basically need Morawa to enable it most times, and she does it. So, but here's the problem. She enables Quillins, and she enables Phoenixes. She both like can take fights better and earlier because of combat, and then also provides the resources to actually build those units out. And those units by default are like actually like so good that they, you know, like perform well even on a hero like Morawa. But it's kind of a gamble. If you walk into a map that doesn't have tier 6 or tier 7 dwellings, then you're basically playing for nothing. You have infinity gems, you can, you know, build out those units, but then without dwellings, you don't have like a substantial enough amount of them, and then you're playing for absolutely nothing. On maps with Phoenix dwellings, amazing. She can do ridiculous things, really good. Quillen's probably pretty okay too. But like, if you don't get these high tier dwellings on the map, then you're basically screwed. You're playing like nothing, and it feels horrible. So for that reason, despite her main strategy being S tier, she is gonna go into low A tier in my opinion. Still though, a very surprising find. I didn't expect the Crystal Specialist to actually be performing that well, but you know, it kind of fits into how the faction is right now in this current moment. Next up is we have Faleor. So Faleor is a fan favorite. He drops a big fireball. So instead of being like 1 hex AoE, it's now 2 hex, and it feels huge, massive. Then you also get the Does Hopless to stack up like a bunch of power, and then you drop like a fat, big meatball. And that gives you like early tempo. Starting with Advanced Murmuring from the beginning of the game is also nice. You can like grab like a good extra skill very early on, get it up to Expert without any problems. Faleor is amazing and very often the pick after the bans, at least it used to be in many formats. After the changes in Murmuring, he has kind of like fallen out of favor. However, is still a pretty good consideration for some formats. Feels pretty good to play. Next up is we have Alluring Shaw. So this is like the Flea hero with diplomacy, completely irrelevant in one hero formats. And next up is Dalia. So Dalia is the Insight Specialist. She gains more stats per level, she levels up faster than other heroes would, and is probably one of the best heroes available on the faction. She feels really good. She gets online fast, then she's also like a mind hero, so she's getting like a bunch of mind stats super early on. If you get Avatar on her, then the game feels perfect, because you're super strong early with like hoplet shenanigans, and then you transition very fast into just being like a generally strong hero. She basically can play any strategy, and she does it really well as the hero. Next up is Vatawna. So Vatawna is the global map specialist. So as always, I have to like explain a tiny little thing. In Vendetta, you get all control spells available at the beginning of the game, but only level 1 spells. So that means you're limited to a single dimension door, you're limited to a single town portal, and if you want to get more, you have to like buy the spell from the astrology, and then you have to like level it up in order to get the higher tiers. Well, Vatawna spawning into the game can immediately DD twice, she can TP twice, and second wind an extra time, no matter how many you have. She is amazing on Vendetta, and not really relevant in any other format. So out of respect for her Vendetta dominance, I will place her in low A tier, but do not get baited. On Vendetta, she is S++. In the other format, she's like C. No, actually probably still like B. So I'll put her in the middle in A tier. So that is the ranking. Next up is we have Elder Tss'kish. He is a Herbomancer specialist. So losing your tier 2 stack and tier 3 stack at the beginning of the game for 2 to 3 Herbomancers is not exactly worth it. Most of the time at least. And then also, you don't exactly want to be starting with Thaumaturgy or either. This is a skill that you want to be picking up down the line when you have like actual spells to cast, when you have actual mana to spend. Then you pick up Thaumaturgy. Starting off with it is like pretty lame. Being a Herbomancer specialist on a wizard is also like kind of feels weird. Not really that great. He's not a lost cause, but yeah, so far I haven't seen anyone pick him even once. I would say that he is C tier. Next up is we have Aeliniel. Well, yeah, Aeliniel, and she starts off with Master Firewall spell. This version of the spell stays active for +2 rounds, so instead of 2 rounds, I believe it stays for 4 rounds. And then she also starts off with Primal Magic. I haven't tried her yet, and I haven't like ever seen anyone try her yet. I can see the potential, however, the problem is that they don't, like Goral doesn't have that super fast flying one stack that can be baiting things into the firewall that easily, that consistently. And because of that, I feel like it's a little bit hard to get like enough value from the spell. It's also like a very expensive spell, so you can't like really clear early game stuff cheap. And so I don't think that Aeliniel is gonna be that great. However, there's some experimentation to be done, and I think she does have potential, but for now, that potential is kept at bay. Next up is we have Glacia. She starts off with the Masterful Ice Bolt spell. It makes the initiative penalty twice as strong. Most usually whenever you're going to be Ice Bolting something, you're already going to be inflicting enough initiative damage. The spell power that you get is also like not really that big of a deal. I don't really believe in Glacia. I don't think she does, he or she does anything that interesting, that great. Kind of like pretty, I mean, it does have like some potential. Just starting off with like a pretty relevant, decent tier 2 spell on a Primal Mage is probably like considerable, but I don't really see like many situations where you would pick this hero. Next up is Vim. So Vim I was the most surprised to actually see be played in PvP. I don't think it did like really that much. The spell Cave-In now makes the terrain take 1 extra damage before getting destroyed. This makes it more of like a reliable crowd control spell out on the field. However, Cave-In is like a pretty expensive spell in terms of mana to deal damage on a fight-to-fight basis. And because of that, I think that Vim kind of fails to be a good, consistent hero. I would put her right next to Glacia. They're basically one and the same. Yeah, basically you pay like too much mana in order to deal damage to a single unit. At least you're getting some crowd control out of it as well. Next up is we have Halon. So Halon is absolutely awesome. He is the Soul Mirror of Olden Era. He has Masterful Chain Lightning. This version of the spell loses half as much damage jumping between targets. So one, you're starting off with probably one of the best damage spells in the game, Chain Lightning. That already is like a huge plus. Then you're making it lose, instead of 50% damage with every bounce, it now loses only 25% damage with every bounce, making it deal substantially more damage. And then of course you buff it with fonts, and then you can do like some really insane fights. You know, it just basically clears the map. So in templates where you need tempo, and you can use the tempo in order to accelerate your game, this hero is gonna be absolutely amazing. So I think that he's like a really good pick for Blitz. I can imagine him being good. I can imagine him being really good in Vendetta. In Vendetta, he's most usually gonna be banned. He's a really good hero. However, he's also like a trap in like more slower formats like Exodus and Harmony. Clearing like a few big fights in Exodus and Harmony doesn't really like get you that tempo to keep accelerating as some of the other formats do. You know, on Blitz, you only need to do like one big objective, and then you're gonna be like rolling through the map, like a big creature bank that will give you like some phoenixes or like some other high tier creatures that will then clear the map for you. Exodus doesn't really have those sort of objectives that will enable you to roll the rest of the map. So be wary of picking Halon. However, in the right situation, he is absolutely amazing. I would put him A tier. Just make sure that you don't really pick him in Exodus. I don't think he's a good fit there. Next is Echolily. So Echolily is like a really funny, awesome hero. She starts with Masterful Mirror Copy spell. This spell can target enemies. Oh my god, you can make a copy of the opponent's biggest stack. Naturally, your copy is going to be like a little bit weaker, but then you can actually maybe buff it with Thaumaturgy and then immediately dispatch of the original and be left around with like the biggest stack of army out on the battlefield. It sounds amazing, but I have to see it to believe it, okay? Seth recently made a video that he likes Echolily and, you know, is doing good stuff with it, but I haven't seen it in the super high level ladder games quite yet. So it might just be a trap. You probably also don't really want to be starting the game off with Arcane Magic. It doesn't really like do anything in the early game. Early Start 1 is going to be like as good as Early Start 3 in most cases because you're going to be just, you know, having more initiative than your opponents. So Energy Explosion is a meme. Impending Fate is usually like a little bit too hard to get despite being like a pretty good early cheesy way to scam a few things. So yeah, I would put Echolily in the very experimental or kind of like a question mark tier of B tier, where I don't trust it, but it has potential. Next is Sullie. Her summoned avatar is immune to magic damage, and it's also like more effective. So basically, Grove is like a super avatar loving faction because they can, you know, like in a single turn, just go bloom, bloom, bloom. Then with strong connections, even like on, you know, like 0 power hero, you're suddenly going to be having 20 power of a cast to spend. And if you spend it on avatar, that avatar is going to be having those stats for like the rest of the fight. And that is amazing. Cheating out power and then summoning avatar is one of the strongest ways to play, and one of the best things about it is that you can use it in every single fight. You know, you're not really like using up any mana to do so, so you're just making yourself like way more consistent, way stronger in every single fight without necessarily like spending any resources. So, you know, being the avatar specialist, getting like extra power on the avatar is kind of silly. Also, with the avatar rework, right now you can get to ridiculous situations where you can summon like an 11 HP avatar, then you make it magic immune with Sullie, making it so you can't like deal any damage to with spells to the avatar. Then, you might also want to get like a Wrath, in, you know, Sigil. Then casting spells, spending focus is going to be reducing the cooldown of avatar. You might actually end up with situations very often where you get a completely unkillable avatar because the opponent is just literally not dealing enough instances of damage to the avatar to kill it off before the cooldown is up, and you can actually just refresh the avatar back to full HP. So yeah, she clears the map, she has like some really good cheese option, the opponent better bring many instances of damage, or like a dispel, or whatever else. She's very hard to deal with, she clears the map. She is the best hero in most situations for Grove. When people have like one ban against Grove, they usually ban Sullie, and that is for a really good reason. So next up is we have the Minstrel. So the Minstrel is a sorcery hero. At the beginning of each round, except the first one, he generates +2 focus points, +1 extra for every 3 hero levels. Having that much focus is usually... And then also the opponent loses the same amount of focus. So focus warfare is not really that much of a thing in Olden Era so far in the current way, well, that the meta is. Not to mention, I don't really understand. I mean, yeah, she wants to be using Energy Explosion, so she wants to get like a bunch of focus, and then use Energy Explosion with it in order to deal damage, but Energy Explosion is laughably bad of a spell. Even if you scale it with Sorcery, it needs a lot more help to actually be relevant whatsoever. So, I don't trust her. I think that's what she does like too poorly. And I think she is going to be C tier. So yeah, it's pretty easy to ban out Goral from having like a really good hero. You're usually going to be banning Sullie, banning Auntie, and then banning whatever other hero is going to be best fitting the format. So against Grove, you ban Vatawna, Auntie, Sullie, or maybe Vatawna, Sullie, Halon, and leave on Dalia. You know, whatever you're more afraid of. So, because of that, the faction actually like struggles quite a bit. Of course, there's like other reasons why the faction struggles as well, but I would say that this is like a pretty big reason why. When the faction gets better and these heroes actually get to like shine, I believe that the rating is going to be like swapping a lot towards the, you know, like towards getting like some of these other heroes into S tier. Like Goral is going to be able to perform. I can see a world where Goral is just going to be like a beast, the best hero of all time. But for now, it's just not the case. And that's okay. We will patiently be awaiting Grow buffs, hoping and praying that it does indeed happen. I thank you for watching this tier list. I'm live almost every single day over at twitch.tv/Glacia. And if you like this type of content, make sure to like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye bye.